Show me the crypto. Show me the crypto. Show me the crypto.
In a world on the brink of disruption, two men will bring you clarity by interviewing some of the most intelligent and influential names in the blockchain world. Welcome to Show Me the Crypto with your hosts, Wade Patterson and Ulf Lonergan.
Well, hi there and welcome to Show Me the Crypto. My name is Wade Patterson.
And I'm Ulf Lonergan.
We're a couple of friends from Canada who love learning about cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology, and we're happy you're along for the ride. Whether you're a crypto virgin or you know your way around the block, we hope our interviews with some of the most intelligent and influential people in the space help bring you value. And on today's episode, we are joined by Andrew, CEO of Koinos Group. If you thought Catch Me If You Can's Frank Abagnale Jr. had an impressive resume, wait until you hear the list of professions tackled by Andrew Levine. Like Abagnale, Andrew was a lawyer, but beyond that, he also has a background in real estate. Andy was a founder and a cryptoeconomist and a community liaison and a head of communications and advocacy, and now a CEO. In 2016, Andrew found his footing in the crypto space via the Steem blockchain, first as a content creator, then as a Steemit Inc. employee. After co-founder Ned Scott announced he had sold Steemit to TRON founder Justin's son, Andrew resigned, but he maintains Steem is the greatest blockchain you've never heard of. Andrew, welcome to Show Me the Crypto.
Happy to be here and really humbled by that summary and that resume that you just gave. I'm much more impressed with myself now than I was before.
That's awesome. Well, we're really excited to have you on. And I want to go back to the beginning of this timeline of your introduction to not the crypto space, but open source software. Because my understanding is that happened when you were in law school. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I'm just so impressed by your research that I'm having to calibrate myself.
Take a step back in time.
Yeah. Usually I have to do all of this recapping. People are like, how did you get started? Now I don't have to do any of that. You did such a good job. And yeah, that's exactly right. I first learned about open source software in law school. And actually I was just talking about this with one of my co-founders, Steve Gerbino, one of our blockchain architects yesterday. And how I'm in the middle of law school and I'm learning about open source software. And I'm thinking, on the one hand, I'm thinking everything I'm learning about the law is crazy. This is the worst system I've ever heard of. It's so antiquated. We just write these laws down and then random dudes just interpret it and argue about it. This is crazy. And then I learned about open source software and I'm like, this is how law should work. This is how everything should work. Of course, at that time, blockchain didn't even exist. But I credit that moment in my life to why once Bitcoin emerged, I was pretty much right on top of it. And then Ethereum and then Steem, because of that experience of that crazy, weird coincidence of open source software and the legal profession. Did I answer your question? What was your question?
Yeah, no, absolutely you did. That was kind of your introduction into it. And so at what point did you make that transition? Because you started as a user of Steem, but then eventually became an employee with Steemit Inc. Were you asked to come join? Did you apply for a job? Did that job exist? Or did you kind of take part in creating it? How did that all come about?
So I was a twice failed entrepreneur at this time. Right out of law school, I started an educational platform called Learn Without Studying. The goal of that was to teach the first year law curriculum, which is also the same as the bar curriculum for the most part, through live action videos like Law and Order on steroids. Terrible idea. Great idea, terrible business idea. because videos are insanely resource intensive. So that was my first failed entrepreneurial endeavor. GiverHub was my second. And now you know all my background. And so Steem comes along. And at this time, I was really burnt out on being an entrepreneur. But I wanted to work for a great tech company. I have actually been an investor in Tesla Motors since it IPO'd. So for me, that was always the gold standard. My dream would be to work at Tesla. And God knows they were never going to hire me. So I was looking out for, or SpaceX, again, never going to hire me. So I was always looking out for the next Tesla, the next SpaceX that might actually hire me so that I could learn from great entrepreneurs, because I was tired of failing as an entrepreneur. And so pretty immediately after I started on Steem, the thought occurred to me, I would love to work for Steemit. They've built this amazing technology. They've built this amazing platform. Nobody else has been able to do this. God knows lots of people have tried, and it seems like they've actually done it. They must be great. I gotta work for this place. And so I started catering my content towards that goal. I mean, part of the genius, I thought, of Steem is that it incentivizes people to market it. And so I saw this opportunity. There was nothing else I wanted to talk more about. You guys know, you find out about Bitcoin, you find out about Ethereum, you immediately just want to start, you want to talk about it all the time, you know? And I felt the same way about Steem. So it was certainly no skin off of my back. And I felt like they really weren't doing a good job of talking about it and getting people excited about the product. And now as a CEO of a tech company, I certainly get it. You're so busy doing other stuff. It's actually really hard to communicate about what you're doing. You know, you can build or you can talk, and it's funny, you can't really build and talk at the same time. It's really challenging. But that's fine. You know, that's what the content creators were there for. And so, I wanted to do it that I wanted to talk about Steem. I wanted to help explain it. I also wanted to keep learning more about it because there was so much to learn. So I was happy to create that content. And part of me was like, maybe I'll get their attention. Maybe I'll get their eye, and maybe I'll kind of maneuver it to get their attention. And fortunately, I had tremendous amount of success on the platform. And my theory was that at the time, nobody was really doing video on the platform. And it was easy enough to add videos to steemit.com. All you had to do was embed a YouTube link. So I didn't really get why nobody else was doing it. So by doing something that nobody else was doing videos and talking about the product itself, and Tesla, that was actually my biggest video was about Tesla, but I compared it to the product, Steem and Steemit.com. My videos started to really take off. So I became one of the most successful content creators on the platform. And of course I wanted that because I have an ego, but I also wanted it because I figured that was the best way to get their attention. And so once that started happening, I sent Ned an email, which I'm sure I have a copy of in Evernote, and I'm sure is super embarrassing and super long, where I like argue that he should hire me. And I think I found out behind the scenes that I don't even know if that made any difference whatsoever. A couple of months later, we had Steem Fest, the first Steem Fest. I was going to say a number, but it had no number. It was Steem Fest. And at the time, they were apparently looking for a community manager. And he asked a Steem friend of mine if he knew anybody, and he recommended me. And so it had nothing to do with my videos.
That long email wasn't the turning point. It was.
It had nothing to do with the long email. Great lesson for everyone out there. Nobody likes long emails.
You were shortlisted for the job before you even applied.
Yeah.
What was it like from Cole's notes version, maybe on this one, but from starting, you start with Steemit as community liaison. You eventually move to head of communications and advocacy. Over that, I guess, 3-year span, what was the experience like? Were you working there when Dan was also part of it, Dan Larimer? Did you have a relationship with him? What's it like working for Dan and Ned, and then just Ned? What was the team of developers like? Give us the behind the curtain of what it was like to be part of that.
Yeah. It's such I'm so grateful that I got to have that crazy startup experience. So I'm happy to talk about it because it was wild. It was wild. Not in the cool sense, nothing cool, not like strippers and blow type wild, like the opposite, nerds and nerds nerding out. Yeah. So, well, I actually auditioned for many months to try to get the job. And then they didn't hire me. They hired. They decided they needed a CMO more than they needed like a community manager role. So my title was community liaison. It was a community manager role, and they hired a guy named Mitchell Lorero to be their CMO. And and then he reached out to me to learn about the community. Ned said, you should talk to this guy. He understands the community. I presented that guy with Mitchell with my marketing plan that I had developed as part of my audition. And then he pushed for me to get hired as community liaison because it was a community focused marketing strategy. So like, it's pretty ironic, right? I was like, we should do a community-focused approach to marketing where we help the community market for us. And so they go, screw that. We'll hire this marketing guy. And then the marketing guy is like, that's the right way to go. Let's hire that, Kind of, honestly, kind of emblematic of the entire Steemit kind of experience, kind of dysfunctional. So while I was auditioning, I got to meet Dan and talk to him a few times. But the way I remember it is that my first official day on the job was the day Dan resigned.
Wow.
And so my first task was to develop communications about Dan resigning, who was really the main reason that I was there.
Right. Wow.
I was like, this is a crypto luminary. This is one of the most innovative minds in the blockchain space. And he's resigning. And now I have to kind of like sugarcoat it. And I think the most interesting thing about that moment in time is that I had to consider, do I even want to be here anymore? This guy's resigning. He's the whole reason I was here. He's the mind behind this. And I'm not the type of person, I don't really need to work anywhere. And I don't want to work somewhere that I don't believe in. Otherwise I would have stayed in like law and real estate. There's money there, a blockchain. And the thing that made the difference was that no one else from the team resigned. And I thought that was very odd. And I dealt with them enough to know that they were great people and they were great minds. And in fact, Dan was not active in the company at all by that time. I can't really talk about what he was mainly working on at that time.
I think we know.
But yeah, he wasn't actively involved in Steem development or Steemit.com development, and he hadn't been while I was auditioning. he was part of the company, so I did get to deal with him, and I liked the interactions that I had with him. He was obviously a brilliant mind. But yeah, so he resigned. But yeah, the guys who were actually doing the hard work, who had actually really built most of it and were maintaining it and were upgrading it, they stayed on, and they were the people that I'd gotten to know and like. And so that's why I decided to stay on. And now, all these years later, all of those people, for the most part, all of the blockchain people are now co-founders of mine at Koinos Group, which I'm very happy about.
No kidding. That's amazing. And what about Ned? You didn't talk about what it was like to work with Ned. What was that like?
Ned and I, Ned was a young entrepreneur working in a new field, learning a lot on the job with a lot of responsibility on his shoulders. And it was really tough. I think Dan's resignation and the way that it happened was really difficult on everybody in the company, and it placed a lot of extra stress on Ned. And I think that, I think Ned did the best that he could. We had a good relationship. We went out to dinner numerous times. We talked very frequently. But after all the stuff went down with TRON, and Ned sold Freudian slip, sold his interest in Steemit and Steem to Justin Sun and TRON. I think he actually said something on Twitter where he was like, not going to be an entrepreneur, not going to start any new companies. And I thought that showed a lot of self-awareness and kind of how he felt about the experience of starting up this company in the blockchain space. I think it was tough. I think his heart was in the right place, but it's really difficult to start companies in this space. And actually, I think this is an important point for me. One of the things that really attracted me to Steemit was that they had a for-profit company. There was a private company whose job I saw as adding value to the open source decentralized protocol. They'd done a proof of work launch. Yes, there was some kind of cloudy stuff around it, but at the end of the day, they didn't raise a ton of money from hedge funds. They didn't ICO. They did this proof of work launch, which was fairly novel at the time. And their incentives I saw as being aligned with the stakeholders of this decentralized ecosystem. And I believed at that time, and I still believe clearly, that in order for a truly open, truly decentralized protocol to flourish, it needs a great private company who's profit maximizing, who's earning specifically fiat revenue, working alongside it to balance it out and pump resources back into the platform. And that was the first time we'd seen that. There was Ripple, but they were clearly a security. They had clearly acquired too much of the token and centralized it. But aside from that, there was really no other company I could work at whose motivation was to add value to a decentralized protocol. And I thought that was a really, really big deal. What I saw through my tenure was how hard it is to actually build that business, because it requires a tremendous amount of business model innovation. You can't just build a business like any other business. And anytime they would hire executives from traditional businesses like chief financial officers or chief marketing officers, they would always try to impose this old business logic onto this new kind of business. And ultimately, I think that's what a big part of what led to its lack of success. And I think Ned was in a very difficult position of trying to juggle all of these things, do this business model innovation while you're doing technological innovation. And I consider myself very grateful that I got that experience of seeing what went right and what went wrong, because now we're trying to do the exact same thing as far as launching a truly open, truly decentralized protocol and a private company alongside it, whose sole purpose is to add value to that protocol. And I get the benefit of having seen what went right, what went wrong with the previous attempt to do that, so that we can improve upon it. And so, for example, our launch is much more open and much more fair. It's perfectly open and fair. And we launched on Ethereum, a pre-existing platform, so that all of the people with ETH had an opportunity to get involved. We launched with a CLI miner. We launched with a GUI miner, so that nobody can say that anyone had unfair access to the token, because we saw how damaging it was to Steem's brand. It wasn't the only thing that was working against Steem, but it was one thing that was really limiting its ability to succeed, was the burden it took on by the shadiness around how it launched.
Ulf, did you realize that our audience has been either watching or listening to this episode for more than 20 minutes?
20 minutes? Man, they should probably subscribe.
100% they should subscribe. They should also like and comment and hit that notification bell. All right, back to the episode.
So, Andrew, in regards to working at Steem, this is more just related to, today's average work environment with COVID, with everything happening around the world. More and more companies have gone remote. Back then, that wasn't the case. But being a technology company, being innovative, you did mention, you'd gone out for dinner multiple times with Ned. Were you working remote, or was there an office you were based out of? How did that work?
I was working remote for my whole tenure at Steemit. And so this whole pandemic thing has been unusually non-disruptive to my life, and actually to our team. It's kind of bananas if you think about it, but I've been working with these guys remotely for 4 or 5 years now.
Right.
And so it really isn't that different than what we were doing before, except now, instead of being the community liaison and head of communications, I'm the CEO somehow. But they're all co-founders, and I'm actually really proud of the fact that all 4 blockchain architects and our head of design are all shareholders in this company. And so they're owners. And I think that's important as far as when you're working remotely. And actually, I think this was one of the things that worked against Steemit, was nobody was invested sufficiently in the company itself. We were all salaried, and when you're all over the place and you don't see each other on a day-to-day basis, I think it just makes it more like a job.
Right.
Now, that being said, I mean, we all cared so deeply for Steem, and these guys were so committed and worked so hard. We all worked so hard. But still, if you're not properly incentivized, you just get kind of resentful and bitter. But yeah, so as far as working, did I answer the question?
No, I think you did.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for filling us in on working remotely. The only follow-up to that is about being incentivized, that I was also curious on. When I've often thought, when you're starting employment at a blockchain-based company, is there incentivization or payouts in some form or fashion that are not through just your fiat currency? Do you reward your staff or employees, and were you maybe rewarded through Steem, the Steem token?
So I can only speak about my knowledge for what some companies in the space do.
Right.
Okay.
I do know that some companies, yes, absolutely will incentivize their employees in their crypto, and they'll even and they basically apply the same tools that you have available to you when it comes to shares, uh, meaning legal contracts like vesting schedules and things like that, where like you'll get 100,000 of this token in a year if you continue working at the company. It's just a legal contract, you know.
Right.
It's the token itself. Now, the thing that I think is interesting about this is that what I've seen is what a lot of companies will do. I think this is a red flag for people too, is when the company incentivizes you solely in the token, and no shares in it. Is it a private company? Does it have shareholders? Is it a startup? Are you taking a huge risk by working there? Is your talent valuable? Then why aren't you getting incentivized through shares in the company itself? Are we not trying to make this thing successful as an independent entity? Do you not think the token is valuable? Like, we've had to expend a large amount of capital mining coin with a K, our token, right? We don't want to give it away. We had to spend money. That's the point of doing a proof of work fair mine launch.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that as we bring on people, we're not willing to incentivize them using coin, but I am saying they're going to see that we're pretty stingy with it because we think it's going to be tremendously valuable in the future. On the other hand, so yes, we will be willing to incentivize people with coin, but another part of the conversation will be incentivizing them with shares in the company itself for several reasons. One, we believe that the shares in the company will also be tremendously valuable in the future. We expect Koinos to be hugely successful, and we expect Koinos Group to be the largest, most successful, most profitable company building on Koinos. So obviously, the shares are also going to be tremendously valuable. And so you should want them, and we want to give them to you so that you're invested in the company's success and you work hard to make this company and this group and this product successful. We also want to see that you want the shares. If you don't want the shares, if you don't believe in what we're doing, if you don't believe in the mission of the company, then you shouldn't be working here. And so, I think what we see a lot is there's this funny thing where often, and seriously, I'm not talking about Steemit exclusively here. I see this all the time, where you almost feel like the people who create the protocol and the token don't believe in it as much as the people that they're hiring or the people that are trying to come work at the company or who are shilling it on social media, because these people are spamming out their token like it's worthless. And I find that sad when you see people who buy into these projects and these narratives where it's very clear that the people founding it don't believe in it and they're going to be gone. And you try to warn them, and you try to warn people, right? But you guys have seen that's a waste of time. People pick their projects, they want to believe, they acquire the token, and then they believe. And so that's why throughout my career, if you look at our communications, we're very careful. We don't hype the token. We're not telling people, buy our token, this is going to go to the moon. Our protocol is going to cure cancer, and it's going to give you sexual favors, and it's going to, we're very factual and accurate with our communications. And that's why even, what happened with Steem, I still feel mostly comfortable with how I conducted myself, because I feel like I was always as upfront and transparent about what was happening as I could be. We were always very factual about what was happening with the protocol, with the limitations of it, and what needed to be done to fix it, because that's a very important, being transparent about the challenges that you're facing is critical to fixing them. And that's why when you look at projects that are only sunshine and roses, it will fail. Because if you're not being realistic about the problems that currently need to be solved, then you're not going to be able to fix them. And there are problems. There are problems with every system in existence.
I want to really detail kind of how this all came about, because we haven't kind of touched on that point yet. So after I mentioned in the bio, Ned Scott sells Steemit Inc. to Justin Sun, and then you and many of the developers resign, eventually starting what was initially Open Orchard. And that's one thing I want to ask about for clarification, that I have some confusion is what is Open Orchard, and then how did that transition to Koinos? But keeping in mind that, you know, one of the aims of our show is for people who are new to crypto. So basically, what is Koinos? What was Open Orchard, and kind of what is it that you're trying to solve with those projects?
Yeah, so when TRON acquired Steemit, we were optimistic with reservations. One of the big criticisms of Steemit was always that it was bad at marketing. And one of the things TRON is credited for in general, I think it's inaccurate, but they're credited with being good marketers. But they also had money. And so we believed very deeply that our team was extremely valuable and that Steem still had a tremendous amount of potential. And we saw the chance for this collaboration between TRON and Steemit, I mean, you know, merger, whatever, to actually take Steem to the next level. And so we hung on as long as we could. We gave proposals to the TRON Foundation or whoever we were dealing with to merge these two protocols in a mutually beneficial way by adding cross-chain atomic swaps to the Steem blockchain. So you'd be able to go in and out of TRON and Steem, and we suggested how we could improve the Steem protocol itself to make it more valuable and more useful to developers. And unfortunately, just their way of doing business was incompatible with how the members of the team who left could tolerate. And so eventually we all felt a moral responsibility to resign. And at this point, none of the developers and engineers who previously worked on Steem are employed by Steemit anymore. They've all publicly announced that they're no longer working there. So we all left at the same time. We all loved working together, and we knew that we were really great at working together. And I think if you look at the Steem blockchain in a vacuum and you look at what these guys were able to do with so little, Steem was born with so many deep flaws and so many deep limitations. And they turned it into the most used blockchain in the world, the blockchain with the most decentralized applications in the world, with the most daily active users in the world. And they actually managed to release innovations that enabled it to scale to meet those unprecedented needs. And we knew that it was a team effort, and we were a great team, and we're friends. So what wouldn't be better than continuing to work together? And now we got to start with a blank slate. And so we decided, basically, let's work together. Let's figure something out. Let's build what needs to come next. And now at the same time, there was another effort to fork Steem into Hive, what we now know as Hive, and create this other option. Now, at the time, we didn't know whether that was going to be successful. That effort was going to be ultimately successful. So in our minds, we were still thinking, what needs to be done to get blockchain to mass adoption? A social blockchain with no barriers to entry still seemed like the best option for getting blockchain into as many hands as possible. And here Steem was about to die. Right. And so the initial thought was, okay, we know the limitations of Steem. We're not working on it anymore. Let's start work on a social blockchain that can scale to orders of magnitude larger than what Steem is capable of scaling to, and meeting the needs of far more developers and users than Steem is capable of meeting. Now, over the course of that time, several things happened. First of all, as we're brainstorming, as we're thinking about the problems and thinking about what we want to build with no masters, right? Like we've been slaving away on Steem, doing what other people wanted us to do, and trying to fight for the right things to build it the right way for years. I mean, HiveMind and Mirror are two important scaling solutions that we released. And we wanted to release them years before they were released. And it was leadership's decision to say, no, that's not important. And so we had seen how, like, we were fighting for good business decisions. We were fighting for good engineering decisions. And at every step of the way, our ideas were being rejected. And so now was our chance to design it right, to build the business right. And we were really unwilling to compromise on anything. And so already our vision for what we're building started to diverge from this idea of a social blockchain. Now, at the same time, Hive gets released. It's a Steem clone. It's adopted by the community. It's adopted by developers. And now our sites get extended deeper into the future, more towards a general purpose platform that decentralized applications like Hive can eventually migrate to. And so what is this blockchain that can scale to the world and meet the needs of as many decentralized application developers as possible? What does that look like? Because when we're looking at, like, who do we care about? We don't care about Steem or Hive. We don't care. I don't care. What I care about are the people who use those blockchains, who use those applications, and the developers who use those blockchains to power their applications. I care about them and them being able to continue building their businesses, continue to meet the needs of their users, and not go out of business. You know, I want them to make more money. I want them to have more success. I want them to have more tools at their disposal. And then you start to think, well, why am I prioritizing Hive developers over Ethereum developers over EOS developers? Because during my tenure at Steemit, I talked regularly to EOS developers and Ethereum developers who were really, really deeply unsatisfied with those platforms. And they loved the feeless nature of Steem. They loved the speed of Steem. But they couldn't program their own smart contracts on it. And that was the deal breaker for them. And so we wanted to meet their needs too. And so that's why the project wound up going kind of a different direction than we thought, and going totally in the direction of a totally general purpose blockchain. And the question we essentially started asking ourselves is, how do we offer a general purpose blockchain that any decentralized application developer can use, but one that is highly upgradable and highly scalable? And kind of ironically, you know, for us, the solution wound up being pushing the limits of smart contracts even beyond what other platforms do. And that's how you accomplish the upgradability aspect. And then coming up with just some very novel scalability solutions that both of which were highly informed by our experience scaling Steem. Oh, and to answer your question about Open Orchard, so we named ourselves Open Orchard before we really knew what we were doing, or what the blockchain would look like. Eventually we came to, as we built out the blockchain, we came up with this name that we fell in love with, Koinos, and we love that branding and we love what it stands for. And now the name Open Orchard just made no sense. And so Koinos Group is just really a rebrand of that company to better align the branding of the company with the branding of the blockchain, which is essentially a decentralized autonomous organization.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah. And I'm curious how you're able to create something, a decentralized app platform with free transfers, free accounts, free smart contracts when so many other blockchains haven't been able to accomplish that. How are you able to do that with Koinos?
Yeah, so with all of the solutions that we've developed, all of the hard solutions we've actually already developed, which is kind of a crazy thing because people still don't believe we're going to ship, but actually all the hard stuff's done. It's just very low level, so we got to build a lot of other stuff too. But all of it comes down to our experience working on Steem. There are tons of great blockchain engineers out there. But when we look at their projects, what we see are people who have no experience actually building decentralized applications. So we're decentralized application developers who are also blockchain engineers. And so we leverage our real secret sauce is our experience. How we accomplish feelessness on Koinos is a perfect example of that, because Steem actually has the most advanced feeless system in the blockchain space. It's called resource credits. It was invented by two of my co-founders at Koinos Group, Michael Vandenberg and Theoretical. And nobody knows about it because nobody knows about Steem, but it's actually a great solution. And you'll remember, Wade, that before resource credits, the user experience on Steem was very unpleasant. Mm-hmm. And after resource credits, people just stopped talking about the user experience on Steem. So we accomplished feelessness on Steem. And so now our challenge is really only adapting the resource credit model to a general purpose solution, which certainly has it. If you'd like, I could explain a little more technically how that solution actually works.
Sure. Yeah. I think we have a bit of a mix of an audience. We're aiming for those new to crypto, but naturally, I think especially early on, we've got a lot of people who are already interested in the space. So
basically, a smart contract is a piece of code that a decentralized network of computers runs. And before the code runs, there's a token in one person's account. And after the code runs, the token winds up in somebody else's account. This is a smart contract. It's a piece of code that moves a token from one account to another account. On Ethereum, that token is ETH. On Bitcoin, Bitcoin has smart contracts. You just can't change them. And when those smart contracts run, when I send you a transaction, when I send you a token, code runs, the token moves from my account to another account. On fee-based platforms, what you do is you add tokens to the transaction, and part of the transaction goes to paying the person who processes your transaction. And so that's how the system remains sustainable, is the people who are running the infrastructure get paid in the transactions themselves. And these are mediated by smart contracts. On Ethereum, developers have the ability to inject custom code into the network and place that custom code within that token transfer, but it still works effectively the same way. I want to say hello world. In order to run that code, I have to have enough tokens in my account to pay for the cost of running it. When the person who's actually executing that code does so, tokens will move from my account to their account. So all of this is to say that essentially, in order for a smart contract to run, a token always has to move from one account to another account. Now, there's a huge exception to this rule that's a big part of Koinos, but it's really unique to Koinos. So there's really no point in talking about it yet. So back to the question, how do you accomplish feelessness? Obviously, it's a highly technical solution. So we're not going to go into the highly technical aspects of it, but you still need a token that'll go from one account to another account. And so the solution that we pioneered at Steem, which will inform the solution in Koinos. So on Steem, we had resource credits. On Koinos, we'll have mana, which is an analogy or a metaphor or whatever that many people are familiar with through video games and through all kinds of applications. And what mana is an intermediary kind of token. It's another token that we create that is specifically serves the purpose of enabling those smart contracts to get executed, but that doesn't require the spending of the base token of coin with a K. And the way mana works is that by holding coin, the blockchain will generate mana and distribute it proportionately to the people who hold coin. And it is a regenerating, non-transferable token. So as long as you hold, you receive mana. You can't transfer it to people. You can't sell it. This is a great example of a potential use case for smart contracts, is that you can code up behaviors like that. We use smart contracts to bound the limitations of what you can do with this new type of token so that the blockchain can continuously distribute it to people without worrying about them selling it or using it for any other things. All you can use your mana for is performing transactions. Now, and so what these features enable application developers to do is to let that token operate in the background so that users don't even have to know about it. What you might do is you might have your front end say to the user, you hold 20 coin, you have this much mana, and as the user uses your application, you'll see their mana decrease and decrease and decrease. But all they have to do is stop using your app, let the mana regenerate, and then they can continue performing free transactions. So the first step is creating this intermediary token that is regenerating and non-transferable. And Will go on the record right now and say that 10 years from now, whatever Feeless blockchain is dominant, it will achieve its feelessness through this intermediary non-transferable regenerating asset. This is how you solve the problem. So you have this intermediary asset that you are constantly receiving in exchange for holding coin. And on the technical side, the way that it works is that the blockchain generates that asset based on its calculations of how much resources it currently has available. So you look at how much CPU it has, how much RAM it has, and you generate these tokens in a kind of stupid way because it doesn't really, right? They're just tokens, they're just meaningless. What you do, what's important is that the supply of the tokens are tightly linked to the resources available on the network, the compute resources. And then you just blast them out to people in proportion to their stake. And then you say, okay, this is what you use to perform free transactions. And once you use up the resources, you can't perform free transactions anymore. But you should get to use the network by buying the token. That's effectively the principle that this platform works under, and any Feeless blockchain should work under. But there really aren't that many functional Feeless blockchains, surprisingly. So the first step is the creation of that regenerating non-transferable asset that enables you to use it for free. Yes, you still have to buy the token, of course, but you're not paying as you go. It's stake to play versus pay to play. This is something I like to say back at Steemit.
You mentioned that mana as a token is regenerative, and that you need to hold coin with a K to utilize or to then have that mana in the first place. And I'm thinking like a video game, just like the name of the token itself. You got your mana bar, and it's regenerative, and it has like maybe a cap, maybe not. But can you run out of it? Like, can you send so many transactions that you run out of mana and it's no longer actually Feeless? Now it's going to cost you something else, or is that not a situation that people would run into?
Well, yes and no. So it absolutely can happen. If you use up all of your mana, you won't be able to transact on the platform. And that's very important for preventing certain attack vectors. If I buy some coin and I can just spam the blockchain, that's unsustainable. Now, one thing you can do is you can buy more coin. Another thing you'll be able to do is you could get somebody to delegate you more mana, which I touched on before, but I haven't really explained. The important next step is to give users, specifically developers, the ability to delegate their mana to their users. And so if you have a user who's a high value user who's going to buy products and services from you, you want to delegate them mana so that they can use your app for free, and so that you can sell them goods and services somewhere. If you're not selling your user goods or services to make a profit, you don't have a business. You don't have a sustainable economic model, and we're not going to support that. But if you do, if you have a profitable business, our job is to make sure that you only have to allocate a very small percentage of your revenue to accumulating coin so that you can have all the mana you need to delegate to your high value users or your valuable users, just your users, your users who are non-maliciously using your application.
So the fact that someone could potentially run out of mana, and I get that that's in place for a reason, and it has a purpose. Is that in any way, is there a drawback to that? Is it still in some way limiting at all, or is that a scenario that you don't really see causing harm or being challenging for those who utilize the blockchain?
Well, it certainly is a limitation, but when you're designing these systems, it's very important that you think about where you impose limitations and why you impose those limitations. And if you hear anybody telling you that there are no limitations to their platform, run. What's important, to your point, what matters the absolute most is the user experience, right, and the developer experience. And in fact, we, as platform developers, we're always thinking about the developer experience, giving the developer the best tools that they have. Every system has limited resources that have to be efficiently allocated amongst the actors in that system. And so really the best you can do is to ensure a predictable user experience. And so the thing about mana, the actual important thing about mana and the important thing about resource credits, because by the way, this is essentially how Steem and Hive also work, except we were never able to implement resource credit delegation on those platforms, but I think that they're working on that now. And so they might eventually integrate that feature as well. Part of the reason resource credits were so important, and part of the reason that the user experience on Steem was so bad, I mean, and this goes right back to the importance of experience. We didn't know that the biggest pain in our asses was going to be users complaining about transactions getting rejected out of nowhere. It just ruined the user experience. And that was a major factor in the development of resource credits, was users being like, this sucks, I'm leaving. I just tried to submit a post. I just tried to do a vote and I just get error. This is ridiculous. And the problem was that it was technically impossible to predict what you would be able to do on the platform. We couldn't predict it. Developers couldn't predict it, so users couldn't predict it. And so we needed to figure out a way to enable them to predict what they would be able to do. The problem isn't enabling people to do whatever they want to do. Anybody who's trying to solve that problem is going to need a genie, in a bottle, right? The right question is, how do we enable users to know what they can't do, to predict what they can and can't do? And that's what led us to developing this regenerating non-transferable asset. And that's precisely why it needs to be non-transferable, is because the moment you allow it to be traded on the markets, you lose the predictability of it. It becomes market driven. And now you're not going to be able to tell what you'll be able to do or not do in the future with this, because the market price is obviously going to be volatile, like everything in crypto. And so if you see other projects who make the huge, massive, terrible mistake of making this asset transferable, it's not going to work. It's not economically sustainable. It's just not. It's like trying to defy the laws of physics. It's stupid. It's stupid. They're dumb. They're dumb people who aren't thinking it through. That's the thing we need to be able to do, and that's what Mana will enable developers to live. Like when you play a video game and it has Mana and it runs out, you feel like the idiot for having used up your Mana. And now and this is the last point I want to make, is that people are smart. Despite my previous comment, normal people who have real lives and real jobs, they have great instincts. They understand how things work. They understand the reality of systems. They understand that there's no such thing as free, that everything has limitations. And when you tell them something's too good to be true, they might use it at first, but there's a part of them that's always thinking something's not right here. And this was actually a challenge at Steem, where Steem, like I said before, where it sounded too good to be true. And so I actually think that users it'll help them make sense of it. When you tell them that a platform is free to use, and we did this with Steem, where we're like, you can join for free. Hey, that's what attracted me to it. But for 3 months, I was researching this thing, trying to figure out where the lie was, what was broken. And so actually, I think it will be tremendously helpful to us for people to understand, yes, if you run out of Mana, you'll have to buy more coin or get more Mana delegated to you by somebody else who has a ton of coin, because nothing in this world is truly free. You know this.
That's a really good way of putting it. So you've written that you expect Koinos to touch every corner of the technology space. So kind of last question about Koinos that I have for you, Andrew, is what's the timeline? What do you see on the horizon for how long it's going to take for your team to start accomplishing some of those goals of scalability?
Yeah, so we're targeting this quarter for the release of the testnet, and we look on track to do that. And I think Q4 of 2021. All in, I think it'll wound up taking us maybe 2 years to launch the mainnet. These are conservative. Like these are timelines we definitely think we can meet. And actually, I mean, Koinos is a really unique product. And part of me thinks that people should really look at the testnet as the alpha version of the product. It's not going to have any features. It's not going to have a consensus algorithm. It's not going to have a resource management system. And to the extent that it does, it won't be the same stuff that mainnet has, because of the innovations in Koinos that enable us to drop in and out new features into the system, because everything is just in smart contracts. So developers, so really once this testnet comes out, developers should begin building their applications and their application stacks as soon as possible, because it's going to take them. I would be willing to bet that we will release our mainnet if developers started building their front ends and their back ends. The day our testnet goes live, we will launch our mainnet before they launch their product. I'd be willing to bet money on that, because it's hard to build front ends and it's hard to build back ends, and you still need to build those things even if you're on a blockchain. So I actually think our timeline is extremely fast. If you look at other projects like Polkadot, I don't know, that's the only one I can think of right now, but EOS, right, took years and years, and they had all this money, and we have raised no outside capital, and we have no ICO, and we're now in the hole because of mining. I think that timeline that I just described to you is incredibly fast. And that's thanks to the technical innovations that we've already solved. And like I said before, those are the hard parts. When the testnet comes out, the majority of our work will be developing the smart contracts that code the business logic. And so, and the important point here is that window is developers' opportunity, not just to build their applications, but to give us feedback on what they want the blockchain to look like. And so it's not apples and apples to compare Koinos to EOS or Polkadot, because what they do is they develop their blockchain as this monolithic block of code that is difficult for them to upgrade. And then they go to developers and they say, here it is, it's awesome, take it or leave it. When we launch the testnet, what we're doing is we're going, here it is, developers, tell us what you want the features to look like. I mean, we're going to have our proposals. We actually have all of the features mapped out, and we think that developers are going to fucking flip their shit about them. But ultimately, they're just suggestions, and we're going to be actively and aggressively soliciting feedback on those features so that we can make the platform better and better and better. And so we could release a mainnet 3 months after the testnet, but I have a feeling that developers are going to come to us and be like, don't release it now. Have you got this feature yet? Have you got this feature yet? We're still working on our backend. Do you have this API yet? Because we really need that. Or do you have this airdrop tool? We really need that. And so the issue is that there's so much uncertainty after the testnet. We can move super fast. The single distinguishing feature about Koinos, the overarching design philosophy, the most important thing guiding all of our decisions, is that we want Koinos to be the blockchain that improves at a far more rapid rate than any other blockchain. It's not about releasing the blockchain that has the most transaction throughput or the blockchain with the best sharding algorithm. Who gives a shit if nobody uses it, if it doesn't deliver a great developer or user experience, right? So it's about rate of improvement. And Koinos is built from the ground up to ensure a far more rapid rate of improvement because, hey, sharding is an improvement. Scalability is an improvement. Transaction throughput is an improvement. So if we can improve at the most rapid rate, then developers and users are going to get better experiences faster than through any other platform.
Andrew, this has all been fascinating, really, really interesting conversation. And we're going to switch gears here a little bit because we like to end every episode of Show Me the Crypto with a little 3-question segment, which we call You Had Me at Crypto. So Alpha's going to ask you these questions.
All right, Andrew, you ready for our You Had Me at Crypto segment?
Sure. Am I trying to go fast here?
No. Take your time.
All right, question 1. Who is your favorite person to follow in the crypto space?
Um, it's a great question. Look, the honest answer is that I'm really tired of crypto influencers and hearing from other people in the crypto space. And I'm really, every time I go on Twitter, I just think, dude, get back to work. Just work, build your product, ship your product. Nobody's saying anything interesting. They're just saying the same old things over and over and over again. But if I had to give a name, it's very uninteresting and uninspiring. It's got to be Vitalik Buterin. You know, he's the ultimate OG. He is brilliant. Ethereum is still the best protocol. It's the protocol that I think is doing the most interesting work and the most innovative work. And he's genuine. He's authentic. He's honest. And he's the OG. He's the ultimate OG after Satoshi. So I got to go with him. But that being said, I'm trying to push for us to move away. And this is no offense, but I'm pushing for people to move away from thinking so myopically about crypto and blockchain as something outside of technology. And I'm hoping we can all move more towards talking more generally about technology and the role that blockchain and crypto are going to play in technology as a whole going forward. So it's a nuanced point. Like, obviously it's still blockchain, it's still crypto, but I think the problem I have with most crypto influencers is that they're so focused on crypto and blockchain that they wind up just repeating themselves over and over again, because they're not thinking about and they're not talking about how this technology is going to spread out and impact ordinary people's lives and make ordinary people's lives better and improve the technologies that they're already using, like their portable devices, their phones, their computers, and any other types of products and services that they're already using.
What will the price of Bitcoin be 10 years from now?
After that explanation, I love it.
10 years from now, Bitcoin. Well, I do think that I love Bitcoin, hold Bitcoin, don't want to sell any of my Bitcoin. But that's because I believe that Bitcoin will likely always be the reserve currency of the crypto space. Not because it will have other utility that will help stabilize its price, and not because because it has cryptoeconomic properties that will stabilize its price eventually, which is to say that because of its token economic design and because of its lack of additional utility, it's condemned to remain a speculative asset forever, which is to say that the price will always remain volatile. And so in exactly 10 years from now, I think it's absolutely impossible to predict what price it'll be. But that being said, if you give me a couple of years range, around 10 years, I do think that Bitcoin will probably be ranging orders of magnitude higher. Yeah, it might be in the $1 million a token range 10 years from now.
What is the most underrated coin or project?
I can't give
crypto?
short answers. I can't give short answers.
I love it. I love it.
This isn't a speed run here.
Perfect.
What is the most underrated coin or project in crypto? And you cannot say Koinos.
No,
of course. Thank you. The most underrated.
I just love the mental thought you're putting into these. It's awesome.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm plagued by the necessity to give honest answers. The most underrated. It's funny. My experience launching Coin on Ethereum while reinforcing our beliefs in the flaws in Ethereum and the importance of a feeless blockchain and all of that, and a faster blockchain and a multi-language blockchain. It's also reinforced how impressive the Ethereum ecosystem is, the tooling around Ethereum, the utility of the blockchain itself. When we were looking to launch our token and to do it in the way that would maximize accessibility, which we think is the most important trait of launching a token. If you're like a genuine project that's really trying to launch something that's going to improve the world, improve people's lives, accessibility is a really important priority when you're launching that token. And usability and safety, or like security, and then ease of use, right? Like, how do you launch quickly and easily a smart contract that is perfectly secure and accessible to a sufficient number of people that's gonna, and that's gonna work? Ethereum was the only option in my eyes, head and shoulders above everything else. And so while it's obviously a highly valued token, if I had to pick the most undervalued token, it would still be Ethereum, because nothing else is interesting to me or usable to me. And we're decentralized application. We're the most experienced decentralized application development team in the world. And when we evaluated all of the platforms, and as we continue to evaluate the other platforms that developers are going to be looking to build their decentralized applications, Ethereum really remains head and shoulders above everything else in terms of developer experience, in terms of utility. Polkadot is a complicated mess. It's gross. The design is really terrible of Polkadot. I'm sure there are tons of great people working on it, really smart people working on it. But the most common error that amazing engineers make is optimizing systems that shouldn't exist at all. And in Polkadot, you see so many systems that shouldn't exist at all, and that nobody was there to impose engineering and design discipline on that group. And you see that played out on protocols across the spectrum, where they're all so busy trying to beat Ethereum that they create a worse solution. So Ethereum's got to be my pick.
I love that answer.
Yeah, well done, Andrew. And thank you so much for taking the time to chat to Alf and I. We really appreciate it, and best of luck with everything you're doing with Koinos.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to Show Me the Crypto. Please make sure to subscribe, as well as rate and review this podcast.